Thank you for staying with us on the program this morning. Just quickly, let's walk you through our discussion on the program. We're looking at the debt profile of Nigeria as it stands today, what exactly got us to this point, and then, of course, where we should be heading going forward. In the middle of that, we can't forget to also take a look at the implications of this reality that we're dealing with as it stands right now. I'm joined by Destiny Owobu, who is a development economist, to help us create perspectives and beat contest into this conversation this morning. All else equal, in the middle of the conversation, we'll be joined by Idris Zakari, public affairs analyst, to also help bring in some insights as we discuss these issues this morning. Destiny, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program here.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
I want us to begin. I mean, you and I have talked about Nigeria's debts profile time and again, and we've also talked about how that there are certain things we are not doing, obviously, that's responsible largely for the reason we are here. But then again, you're wondering, as it stands today, we're told that by the time the Senate, I mean, having approved this last set of loans for the federal, I mean, for the executive, it means that in the end, Nigeria's debt profile would have hit something around the neighborhood of 48 trillion. Exactly. So how do we explain that to unborn generations, for example, in such a way that it makes economic sense to them?
Yeah, the only way you can explain it is if the infrastructures came up. We saw a well-diversified economy. We saw a buoyant economy with a lot of returns that could pay it back capital and interest multiple times. Because the purpose of borrowing is to ensure that you make up for shortage of domestic capital, and then use the advantage of borrowing from the future to solve the problems of the present.
Right.
Okay, so the economics of it is that we expect that we can't wait for the future. We borrow from the future at today's prices, and then invest in capital projects and things that are income generating, and then we hope that in the future we are able to make more money and take advantage of the situation. So that's the economics of it all. So it will only make sense if our children become richer and wealthier because of the decisions we took today. But where the debt accumulates to a certain point that becomes a debt burden or an overhang, or maybe possibly a debt crisis like we had in 2004-2005, then it doesn't make sense.
I think then again, you're looking at the nature of our economy. Some persons have said we have relied too much on oil, and the prices of oil at the international markets naturally are volatile.
Yeah, of course.
They're so dynamic in a way that you can't predict where they are heading tomorrow morning.
Yes.
And then we're wondering, hasn't Nigeria as a country, as an economy, learned a lesson from these dynamics?
We do hope that they've learned a lesson, but like I said, the Nigerian story is a recurring decimal. You know, there's a favorite statement. We say we go to the drawing table. We always go to that drawing table every time, now and then. So it is difficult to be optimistic about what Nigeria is doing at any point in time, not because we are trying to be not patriotic, but because of the antecedents, because of the history of such beautiful plans and beautiful reasons. You know, in 1985, when we went for the structural adjustment program, a lot of economists argued against the idea. Brilliant ideas were brought. We need to do this, liberalize the economy. You know, on paper, our policies are very beautiful on vision and others. Now, 30, 40 years later, the economy is in shambles. So if we follow the antecedents of the past, we have no reason to be very optimistic about the future. But we have to look at it from another angle. Beyond the government and decision making, the total debt of even the private sector has skyrocketed in the interim. So let's assume that the government managers are politically motivated and things like that. But the private sector too, they have their own basic metrics by which they determine their performance. As I speak to you, in just the last 3 years, the total debt of the private sector to the central bank is 32 trillion. It has also increased the way the public debt is increasing too. And these people have managers, they have the data to operate in that market. So I think there's a general debt system around the world. All over the world, a lot of countries are borrowing to get out of the COVID-19 aftermath and things like that. So there's a general upward trend in global debt. that even the United States of America is heavily indebted right now. So a lot of countries are upping their debt. And so I want to see a general trend. I want to see that it's not just a Nigerian problem. It's just a way of businessmen and governments trying to get out of the doldrums, I mean, from the bottom. And I want to see it like that, because it's not only government that is borrowing a lot now. Businesses are borrowing.
Also borrowing.
I mean, private businesses in their own way are borrowing. In my own personal business, I'm borrowing to survive this period.
And be able to scale as well.
To scale as well. You know? So, but what we try to do is to make sure that you are not borrowing at a rate that we create more problems for you, so that you don't become a part of the debt cycle. And I told you, debt is like opium. You know, it's addictive. Right. So there's a point you get to in this taking of debt. It's easier to borrow, but difficult to pay. You become addicted to it, and then it becomes a spiral, a pattern.
So the other you break the cycle, the better.
And if you don't break that cycle, you become it goes down.
I doubt I want to break this conversation. So we can expand the size of our panelists this morning. I want to bring in Idris Zakari quickly, so we're taking a quick break right now.
TMI, every opinion counts.
So we just got in Idris Zakari, public affairs analyst, to help us also bring in some insights as far as this conversation is concerned. Zakari, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program here.
Thank you so much.
All right.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I was talking with Destiny just before you showed up this morning. We're talking basically about, just creating a background around our debt profile in this country. And I know you have also been interested in what causes this kind of situation and how we hopefully can deal with this in the final analysis. But let's talk about how that we've seen this argument basically between economists in this country and the Minister of Finance arguing back and forth as to debt to GDP ratio, for instance. That's been very controversial. And for the everyday Nigerian, it is neither here nor there. But how do we find sense in that sort of bickering, for example?
Okay, so basically I would like to put, it's important to put any discussion we are having on national issues in perspective.
By all means.
Otherwise, we'll mix it up and then we'll lose the substance of the issue while we dwell on the politics and sometimes the economics of it. You know, sometimes depending on the political leaning of the economist who is speaking, they either speak either for or against the debt. So it's more of where you belong politically. And you know, once there's politics involved, it becomes a thing of where your bed is nested and where your bread is buttered or your tea is sugared. But just to speak to the issues, as at this material time, I usually want to ask us, what choices do we have if we are not borrowing? As a nation, we are now 44 trillion in debt. That's about
already
less than $1 trillion, just about $900 billion. That's a lot of money. And we seem to borrow more, especially at the federal level now, to fund certain key infrastructural projects. For example, the Lagos-Ibadan rail was built solely with debt from China. And they are looking for money now to build from Ibadan to Abuja to Kaduna to Kano to Maradi. Then they are also looking for money to renovate the one we have from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. They are funding the second Niger bridge with debt. They are funding major routes, Lagos-Ibadan, and even this Benin, Ofosu, Shagam to Lagos Express Road. So some of these projects, without this accessing these monies, would be almost nowhere. So it's like the story of a father who has at now is able to maybe feed his family, take care of his wife, pays his children's school fees, but now he's borrowing to maybe build a house in the hope that when he becomes a landlord, he will begin to recoup. You know, investment you put in a house takes 50, 60, 80 years. It's a long-term investment to recoup. Debt in itself, like the first speaker was saying, is not a bad thing. But you must borrow comparative to how soon and how well you can pay back.
And then get value for the borrowing.
And get value for borrowing. You know, we've had instances before where people borrow and just steal it. They borrow and steal, borrow and steal. And in Nigeria today, the joy, a little bit of it is that because I have gone to Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, I have seen it. I'm happy about it. It cuts your commute time. It's safer, and it's I should say it's cheaper than road transportation when you put into consideration the hassles and everything that is involved. I am looking forward to a situation where we will have, okay, there's also the Warri Itakpe,
of course,
rail line that is functional. I'm planning to use it to go to Abuja just in about a week time. These things didn't exist before because the Benin Abuja road has completely collapsed. So now if you want to go to Abuja, you have to go to Warri, get to Itakpe, then take along like you are going to New Benin and find yourself in Abuja. That's just the best way to do it right now. If you don't have money to fly, of course. So I think if you look, the United States of America, for example, is the richest nation on earth by every standard, speaking militarily, economically, and otherwise. But it is also the most indebted nation as we speak.
So what difference have they been able to strike
because
as against what we have back
they
at home?
borrow and invest in their infrastructure, in their people. What we have had before now is that we borrow and steal. That is the basic difference. And you know, the Muhammadu Buhari administration, credit, you know, there's not a lot of credit to them, but credit to them on this. They have a borrowing plan, 2018 to 2020. And of the 28-point-something billion dollars they wanted to borrow, they've only been able to access 2.8 billion.
So far? Yes.
It then means that even the international bodies are trying to know if we can pay. And any man who is borrowing, who is giving you money must, in fact, it's as a rule of thumb, if you want to borrow money from me, I must assess you and know if you are creditworthy before I can give you money.
Right.
So they also want to know. And most times what these guys do, these guys are broke because they know that African leaders borrow to steal. They now tie the borrowing to
key projects.
Yes.
And they follow through.
And they follow through. Look at what China did with the rails. And they are doing with the rail across the country. You want to borrow from China? Fantastic. What do you want to spend this money on? They take the money, they help you put it on it, you put it in your national budget, and then the benefit to them is that they are repatriating more than 40 to 50% of that money back to their country. Because they will bring in Chinese staff, they will bring in Chinese expertise, they will bring in Chinese technology, and all of that you are paying with the money you borrowed from China. Okay, so you want to build a house, for example. I am a building contractor. I say, okay, come. I tell you, I want it to take you 100 million to build this house that you want to build. And then I say, okay, I'll borrow it to you in your name, but I'll be the one to be the contractor that builds the house. So they are smart. They are not stupid. They don't throw money anyhow. Because Africa is very, very unstable. And you give money to a leader, tomorrow that leader is toppled. How do you recover your money? Right. It becomes a pariah state. It becomes an unending circle of confusion and violence. That is why they also now tie funds to projects. The disturbing part is the one that is done by our subnational government, the state government. More often than not, they come up with bogus, ambiguous projects that you cannot account for. You know, theirs is not that big, like the federal government. And you see, they keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and you cannot attach it to a particular project on ground without sounding critical. In Edo State, for example, we've borrowed over 48 billion in the last 5 years. I would have loved the situation where they would say this for 10 billion of this 48 billion is attached to this project. And this is the project, this is the level of execution of that project. Like Clifford Odia said, the senator who is in charge of the committee that regards to borrowing, external debt, and he's from Edo State, Edo Central. He said that this new borrowing that they are doing now, the one they got approval for 5 days ago.
In Edo State?
No, in national level. The Buhari administration, 16 billion, and another, I think, 1 billion, then another $125 million in grants.
Yes.
Were attached to already projects that were under execution. So they execute to a certain extent. The people are also not stupid. Those giving you money, they give you, and when you want to come and collect again, they will say, okay, what percentage of how far have you gone with executing this project? Right. They will say, okay, you've done 60%. We'll give you again. Go and add another 20% to it. Then they do it like that till they execute it. Hopefully, when these projects come on stream, if you see the quantum, the traffic in Lagos Ibadan rail line, you will be impressed. Hopefully, this money will begin to come back. Let us not kid ourselves. This money will take 100, 200 years to pay back. Yes.
You made reference, you made continual reference to the issue of rail, which of course you just ended your narrative with. But let's talk about that for a minute. Not too long ago, we saw how that the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, was grilled by a committee of the National Assembly, the Senate in particular. And then there was a clause that the senators, and of course indeed Nigerians, said they were not comfortable with. A clause they now say or insinuate that makes Nigeria more like an annexation of China in the event that Nigeria defaults regarding that debt, for example. Shouldn't such clauses, because we are told that such clauses are replicated in many of the contracts, or if you like, agreements that we have with these countries and several of these Bretton Woods institutions, for example. How do we begin to make sense of our borrowing in such a way that we're looking at the next 20, 50, 100 years, for example? Because it appears when we borrow in this country, whether at the national or sub-national level, we do it with some level of short-sightedness. We make it look like the world will end first thing tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, your creditor is looking at the next 50, the next 100, the next 200 years, for instance. So how do we stop playing catch-up along this line?
You see, well, like I told you, the guys who are giving you money are not stupid. I think we are ham-twisted as a nation. We only have China now to give us substantial amount of money. The United States will not even look at it.
So are we desperate?
More or less. Yes, more or less. We have a critical infrastructure gap in our nation.
Obviously.
With all the heavy borrowings and with the most prudent of spending, we are going to need another 100 years of huge investment in infrastructure for us to meet up with even our neighbors. When I say our neighbors, those who are in the same category with us: Brazil, India, Malaysia, Indonesia. They've gone so ahead of us. So much. Indonesia, they have 3 economies. They have the blue economy, the digital economy, and the third one now, what do they call it? The white economy or what? Here we are still battling with even the blue economy. The one they call entrepreneurship, do it yourself. The one you advertise, yes, the one you advertise, do it yourself. How to make a hat, and we are still struggling with all of that.
We have not been able to conquer that sphere.
Yes, like a man has not been able to eat 3 times a day. He wants to drive a Range Rover. It's a big problem. You cannot survive it. You understand? Now, China is the only nation, as of today, only advanced nation who can conveniently give you what you want. But they are also not
with stringent of terms.
With stringent of terms. In an Africa, I think in Zambia, they have taken over some of their coal mines. They have taken over some of their critical national infrastructure, their assets, because they are not able to meet up with the loan bargain. In our own part, we are a very big nation, no doubt, and anybody who is giving us money knows that there are potentials here. Nigeria market is about 210 million. Whatever we put here will turn to good if it is properly managed.
On account of population?
Yes, on account of population in itself is a strength.
Right.
Yes, you see, the most powerful nations on earth are some of the most populated. The US, as powerful as it is among the countries with the least population that is that powerful. China is in the billions, India is in the billions, Brazil is in the billions, in millions now. But Nigeria in itself, we have that population, and there is hope that when some of these things come on stream and people are able to move, you just need to, if you are into haulage like I am, and you want to take your truck from Lagos to, let's say, Kaduna, your truck might break down the road 3-4 times. Not because of the truck.
In between one trip.
In between one trip. And what you lose, sometimes maybe the trip is maybe 800,000, for example, you end up spending up to $1 million to get the goods to even the customer. You just want to get the goods to the customer. Imagine we had smooth roads and your vehicle runs on those roads from Lagos all the way to Kaduna and drops the load, and then you are saving more money. These things are acting. Did that mean taxes will come in?
Right.
I have more purchasing power. I buy more things. I live a better life, and the economy will grow. So sometimes you borrow to boost your economy. That's what they do most of these European nations that you see have very strong social investment program in their people. Like during the pandemic, in the US, for example, if you are handicapped, you just sit in your house and pay you, I think, $2,000 a month. $2,000 in Nigeria is more than the salary of a professor. That's what somebody earns in the US for being handicapped, for being able to do nothing. Yes. But here, you can't even pay a professor that. You know? So, that's how they reflect their economy, because when you put money in the hands of people, they are able to spend.
To do more, yeah.
Yes. And some of this borrowing will also create a lot of employment. I've taken time to inspect the Lagos-Badagry Express Road. If you see what been constructed by the Chinese Civil Engineering and Construction Company, CCECC.
Yeah.
If you see the volume of work that is going there, the kind of bridges they are building, sometimes I will ask my friend, I say, man, these kind of bridges, you don't find them anywhere else. If we're able to open that corridor, for example, to Badagry, then to maybe Benin Republic, and then instead of you bring rice to Benin, You know, Benin will import 20 million tons of rice. A country that has less population than Lagos, with the idea to smuggle it through the porous
Nigeria.
Yes, the porous Ogun-Lagos border into Nigeria. If we're able to cut off all of that and make it difficult for them, then you see that the economy will reflect. The problems of Nigeria is not so much it's not the borrowing in itself. It is the utilization and then the economic impact of that borrowing on the common man. If we were not borrowing, let me be honest with you, by now we will almost be no more. Let's face it. Because of
the economic realities.
Yes, the economic reality. What is coming into this country at this material time cannot even pay salaries conveniently. We are using more than 90% of our net worth to pay salaries. Then how do you build roads? How do you build schools? How do you fund the military? That's another critical aspect that China is helping us. China, India, some of the Pakistan recently, because the US has stayed back. They have not been helping lately, and you need to get help. How do you fund the military? If not that some of these critical, okay, the other day I like giving practical references. In Lagos, I've not seen that huge number of MRAPs, mine-resistant armored personnel carriers belonging to the military, being shipped out from Apapa. Big vehicles that when they stand, they are the size of a truck, but they are meant for the military. If you don't have this kind of critical asset for your military, they will be killing our boys like our boys are nothing. So you have to have this kind of investment, ensure that there is peace and security. If there was peace in the Northeast, by now maybe we'll be exploring Lake Chad Basin for oil. New frontiers in oil, and if we get oil, it then means no matter how little extra money
comes in. I'll let you catch your breath here, Zachary. Wonderful points you have made, no doubt about that. But let me talk to you, Destiny. People have talked about countries around Africa, I mean, same continents. Egypt in particular. People have said, look, Egypt borrows just like Nigeria does. But you go to Egypt, you see real-time development on the ground. So they say, well, it is the difference in the quality of leadership that we have, that sort of thing. What exactly is stopping us from taking a cue from these countries? Can we also understudy these countries? Look at some of the things they've done, like the way a country like Singapore had done back in the day, between the 60s and the 70s, for example, that shot them all the way from being a third world nation to being a first world country as it stands today. What exactly should we be learning from these countries?
I think we shouldn't be learning too much from those kind of countries because Egypt is one religious country. And when you think about the Egypts, think about Arabs generally, they commit to a particular vision. And they follow all the way through because they see themselves as one in some way. Now, you also mentioned Singapore. It's an Asian country. They have an Asian vision. Okay? But Nigeria is a very multi-diverse society. Okay?
The better say that's supposed to be a blessing for us.
It's supposed to be, but you know, when you have a country with difficulties like Nigeria, it takes time for this country, different disparate groups to form an organic vision that they believe in. That's where we've not been able to have a leader that's able to galvanize us into one coherent vision. That in potential, only few countries have the potential of Nigeria. But it takes time to build that unity and that vision. You know, look at it. The Oduduwa Republic is trying to come from here. Biafra, these issues, these discussions are going to continue. You know, in 2006, I was trying to write a book, and I said, we don't yet have Nigerians yet. And there's a reason I said that. If I ask you where you are from, you say you are from Edo State. We still have people who say you should not marry from this place and things like that. We don't yet have core Nigerians. What we have are people who have one common identity. They call them Nigerians. But in spirit, we don't yet have Nigerians. Now, in the next 50 to 100 years, we are going to have people who are really Nigerians. Your father is an Edo man, your mother is an Hausa man, your grandfather is an Igbo man. And then when they locate you, they ask you, who are you? You can't really trace where you came from.
So you just say you are in
Nigeria. It's small, so already getting there, you can see intermarriages and things like that. So, but in potential, these things are supposed to be great. When the way the Igbo man sees the world, the way the Edo man sees the world, the way the Hausa man sees the world, if we're able to take advantage of our different cosmologies and put it into one vision, it is very hard to deal with a country. That's what America has. That's what the United States has. It is the same problems we have that they have. That's why they had a lot of problems when they were developing too. Black and white problems, racism, these issues, women not voting and issues like this. These conversations we hold, democracy allows these kind of conversations to hold, and then we settle for a point. There's another thing too, I also noticed. Because of this ethnicities, connections to our ethnicities more than the national vision. When somebody gets to power, it tends to think mainly nepotistic. How am I going to benefit my own people? You know, and like I said too, most of the leaders of Nigeria, they are older than this country. You know, when that happens to you, we got independence in 1960. Some of the people who give us independence, they are still in government. They feel they own Nigeria. But in the next 50 years, the first generation of leaders will disappear. And then nobody will be able to lay claim to any section of this country. Because we really say we are Nigerians. And everybody, even a young man like Mr. Sylvester, can go for politics without thinking he has any godfather somewhere. And so you go there with a full might that you are a core Nigerian, you have the same stake like any other person.
And you want to serve Nigerians.
Yes, because all of us, we are post-independence, we believe in one country. Beyond that, I think the difference in this governance is, like I said, our politics is evolving. At first, when we formed this country, the brightest people were ruling this country. As at that time, they went to school abroad, most of them, you know, because they inherited this system from the British. Of course. But when the military came in, the military is more focused on discipline than cognitive development.
And you drive that with force.
Yes, and for the military to exist, you must have some bruteness. You must allow some pragmatism more than intelligence and, you know, and systems. So it doesn't, this intelligence nagging and quarreling does not work with the military. They like to get things done. Because they ruled us for a cumulative total of 29 years, that period was enough to remove meritocracy and those kind of things from our government. And so we allowed only brute-oriented people who have these brute abilities to get to politics. And if you notice, the last 20 years, people that ran into our politics are people who are not very, very sophisticated in thinking. They don't know how to design systems, and so, but they know how to get power. But that is changing. If you notice, some states are beginning to vote intellectuals in power. Intellectuals are not the best leaders per se, but allowing intellectuals to get to power allows them to circle themselves with more intellectuals too. You know, that requires discussions at higher levels, not primordial basics. You know, when that happens, over time, our politics will clean out people who shouldn't be in politics. To put people who are issues-oriented, who are development-oriented, who are more sustainably oriented than just ad hoc measures.
I want to talk to you, Destiny, quickly.
So these are leadership issues, and like I said, what the government is doing now basically is to just put a template, infrastructural facilities on ground.
Yes.
The money we need to develop this country, I must state, will not come from this country. You know why I said so? Our budget is just $45 billion. It is a paltry sum. There are trillions of dollars running through the planet. We are not just catching enough of that. Okay,
by way of foreign direct investment.
Because we don't have this infrastructure we're talking about.
So how do you attract them?
You get these things done. You build the infrastructure. When you do that, businessmen are greedy everywhere in the world. When you put the system on ground, with the population of 206 million people, projected to be 400 million by 2050, Nigeria is a powerhouse. It's a bomb waiting to explode. In terms of development, it's a sleeping giant. These people, the United States, China, and others, we see Nigeria as a fighting place where they need to put their presence. They will bring trillions of dollars to this economy, and they will fight it out. We will truly develop. I have that. I can see it coming. We will develop. In potential, they know it. We have all the resources. 36 pure natural resources. I mean, that are economically viable. We have not tapped any of them. Only one crude oil. So these people see the potential of this country. And so, but we need to get some things right, get governance right, get systems right, get sustainability right, get those small things that encourage them to come in. When they will come with trillions of dollars. Those trillions of dollars will multiply themselves within the system. But if we don't get the foundation right, they won't come. They will see Nigeria as a not organized place. For example, they are giving us loans. They're also checking how we spend the money. And that is why transparency is very important. The government has to be transparent where they are borrowing and how they spend it. If they see some seriousness in the way we do our governance, that we have stopped doing this ad hoc governance, where we just borrow, do this, whatever. The old order, you borrow this, you do it. Nobody questions you. No institutions, no investigation, nobody goes to jail. They will say these people are not serious. But they see that there's a seriousness in our public budgeting, our borrowings pattern, and the way we spend the money. It's just, there's what we call the bandwagon effect. When you start something at first, it looks as if it doesn't have influence. But the moment you begin to do one good on top of another good, it gets to a place, it becomes a multiplier, and it will run fast. China, for 25 years, did not make any major progress from the 1940s to 1979. But they were doing some things underground. When they opened the economy up in 1979, from 1979 to 2000, China became the fastest growing economy in the world. That's because they have they've always had the potential. but they just need to get some things ready.
Yeah.
And so we need to do something like that. We need to get our society very organized and then allow these people. They will have to come. The problems we face have been solved by many countries. We are not the only people who have faced this kind of problems. There are people who know how to solve our problems. They are brilliant. They have the resources to do that. But they just think we don't have the right governance structure. So we need to get those things right.
That sounds
and
like
then they will come. And then when they come, you see the money that Nigerians are running after, the crude oil money, it's actually very small compared to the amount of money that we run around the world. It's very small. I've told South Africa here spends $150 billion in their budget. The US budget is $6 trillion. We are talking about, I mean, Canada is about $1.6
military budget
alone is
of the US.
I mean, there's a lot more than the
national budget of Nigeria.
Yes, the university budget in the US is almost as big.
It's more than that. Harvard generates 10,000 megawatts of power. One invests in the US generates more power than Nigeria.
Than the whole Nigeria together.
You can imagine that. So imagine what we need to do is to be a magnet for investment. We become a big magnet for investment and allow billions of dollars to fly to this economy, and that requires that you work.
I want to talk to you about something quickly before I get back to Zachary here.
Yes.
The revenue component of this conversation.
Yes.
We've seen, for example, the Nigeria Customs Service. We've seen the Federal Inland Revenue Service come up every other year with targets for revenue, for example. Most times, especially the customs, these guys would exceed their targets. For that year in terms of revenue generation, for example. Some persons would have thought, look, this should be enough to cushion the pressure, the financial pressure that drives us to borrowing every now and then. How much of difference has that made, really?
Like I said, even the money they say they made and things like that, it's still nothing. Do you think about the scale of this country, the problems we face? I'll give you a background. The USA has about 6,000 universities for a population of 330 million. Nigeria has not more than 200. US has a lot of international airports, more than 1,000. Nigeria does not have up to 100 international airports.
We have 5, but it's only 2. It's one that is working.
That is working very
Lagos.
well.
Abuja, they will come to Lagos first, or they will fly through Lagos.
The US generates 1.2 million megawatts of power. 1.2 million. Nigeria has not been able to generate 10,000 megawatts of power. The USA has 650,000 secondary schools. Nigeria does not have up to 70,000 secondary schools. Just 2 times our population. There's a lot we do not have, and the resources are not there. Nigeria is typically a poor country in terms of the finances it has, but in potential it's a rich country. There are 2 different things. So if people say Nigeria is rich, that's an ignorant statement. They say Nigeria is not rich. The total money we budget, I'll give Apple, the budget of Apple, an American company, is bigger than the budget of Nigeria. You understand that? So what we need, those IFRS, the money they say they generate, is crumbs compared to what we need to move this country. Like I said, private capital. A society like Nigeria that is still government driven, when the government itself is poor, the total budget is 14 to 16 trillion, total budget of Nigeria that we used to, we talk about.
It's just recently.
It's just recently. It used to be 6 to 7 trillion. 14 trillion naira. Are you serious? That cannot do anything for this country. What we need is to use that 14 trillion in a sensible way and sell our potential to the world so that trillions of naira, trillions up to 300, 500 trillion, we enter this economy in the next 30 years. And then let Nigerians use their potentials in a more organized setting. Those things we are doing are just, we are preparing for the day to come. For now, we don't have the capital to develop this country. We don't even have the intellectual capital. Like I said before, how many Nigerians, I said about our education, we have a lot of, when the British left Nigeria, the kind of education they gave to us was secretariat education. We still have that secretariat education till today. We create people for offices. A lot of...
Not the civil service system.
Civil service, the kind of knowledge we have is basically secretariat knowledge, how to run an organized system. But we don't learn how to develop systems. That one is a secret, it's technology. The white man only educated us to the point so that we can work for them as secretary officers. But what we need is people who are going to develop our Ajakuta mine steel complex, Alaja steel complex, people who are going to mine the gold in Nigeria, people who are going to convert the gas, process it, sell it inside this country and sell it abroad, people who are going to develop cars. Cars, we need to have our own car companies, we need to have our own fashion companies, our chemicals companies, our glass companies, our cement companies, our oil companies, entertainment. In fact, Hollywood alone, the money Hollywood generates, we can tell stories too.
California alone is worth more than the whole of Nigeria.
You can imagine that. Everybody can tell stories, but we need to learn how to tell stories in a way that generates billions of dollars. We need a well-developed market. So that when I shoot a movie and I spend 300 million for a movie, I'll be able to generate 6 billion and put it back into the business. We need systems. For example, sports. These are things we can do. We can organize our sports in a certain way that instead of us watching Champions League, we can have the Nigerian League, one of the top in the world, where we can have European players come to this country to play. These are things we need to do. It requires serious systems thinking, planning and investment. You know, that requires top-level thinking. But the average Nigerian, and the kind of education we have, is just to, survival education, the one you use to get a job or something like that.
No ticket kind of thing.
But like when these big players come to this country, they will help us set up these schools because they need workers. So they will have to train the mind of the Nigerians. The average Chinese I mentioned now, and Indians and others, they've not taken advantage of the world. If you check the biggest companies in the world, they are run by Indians. Because they develop competencies in the areas where Nigerians tend to sleep off. Technology, software engineering, and things like that. So we need to have our own Facebook, our own WhatsApp, Nigerian homegrown. Why? Because of our position in Africa, strategic position in Africa, if Nigeria manages to rise, we'll pull the whole Africa to ourselves. 25% of African GDP is Nigerian GDP. So Nigeria is surrounded by people who are capable of buying. 1.4 billion people are immediate customers just by color.
On the continent?
On the continent, just by color. Imagine if Nigeria rises. You see all these South Africa and other countries that are oriented towards Europe, only 15% intertrade between Africa. They will come back to Nigeria. You know why? We have certain commonalities. Why would a country like Liberia be doing business with America when Nigeria is a big brother close by? You know, we just need to have confidence and come out of what we currently are and take advantage of our potential. Market potential, 1.4 billion Africa population, in case no European country wants to patronize us. If we rise,
that's more than China.
That's more than China itself already. You know, just having a ready market of black people, the continent. And we have always had this reputation of big brother Africa. We can get out of the talk and really set up systems to make us feel like big brother.
Okay, great.
So that money will come to this country. These things I'm talking about are idealistic. But I do believe that the government means well for this country, and that currently the current borrowing is not like the one we used to have before. I've been following what they are doing. I see these railway lines, I see these things. I see the Siemens contract for power and things like that. I see that there's some level of intelligence going into this kind of borrowing that we're doing. The reason I'm not too optimistic is because I just hope it is not like it's going to be the past. But so far, this one is different from what we are used to, where you just borrow and do things the way you like.
And nobody gets to know exactly what you have done with the money.
Well, the fact that we're having this conversation every time shows that a lot of people are beginning to
There's transparency in it. We are seeing it.
We are seeing it.
We hear it.
And then we should be very careful to ensure that we are not just borrowing and make it a habit to the point that we don't get out of it. But so far, I think I'm hopeful in this country. Maybe not now, but maybe 30, 40
in the
years
future.
I do hope that if we get our governance right, for example, democracy is improving. We are seeing a lot of improvement in our democracy. We are seeing some serious decisions at the highest level. I do hope that if we sustain this peace, democracy, and good governance for just another 10 years, something will happen. The bubble will burst, and then this foreign capital will flow to this country, and Nigeria is on its way.
Okay, thank you so much, Justin. Let me talk to you as we wrap up now, Zachary. Some persons have said beyond approving loan requests from the executive, the National Assembly, particularly the Senate, would by all means have to do more in terms of due diligence, for example, in terms of monitoring and evaluation of not just how you got the money, how much you got, but how you're spending the money, where exactly you're spending the money, and how much of value Nigerians, who are the end users, are getting from these monies we're borrowing.
Well, like I said before, even the Senate job has been made easier by those who are even borrowing us the money. They help us look at it now. It's no longer it's no longer business as usual. And usually, sometimes they debate this issue and then approve. They will not give you money and say take $10 billion and go and build rail in your country. No, they will say take $10 billion, build Lagos Ibadan rail line.
Specifics.
Yes, they are specific to the team. And you see, like I've listened to the argument about the Kano Maradi rail line, and I'll just be laughing. They say, why don't you do a rail through the east and all of that? There's this argument. But if you see the wisdom behind the Maradi rail line, that according to them say they want to whether recolonize Nigeria or Niger Republic. Imagine how preposterous that is. you see that Niger, instead of using trucks to carry goods from the whole of North Africa, because North Africa, they all pass through Niger, they are all landlocked, they don't have seas, they don't have access to the sea. If we can have that rail line running from Maradi to Kano to Kaduna, all the way to Lagos, they will move their goods through us. And we are collecting customs, we are collecting, that is what he said earlier. Our custom, the entire custom, the revenue coming from custom is still nothing. It's not up to the budget of a secondary school in the US. Maybe a secondary school of 1,000 students. Everything that custom has collected. And you see them dying every day. They are fighting in Arepo. They are fighting in all the borders, fighting communities, seizing chickens. If you go to Lagos, you see there's a special, the edges of Lagos now towards the border. You see there's these vehicles that have very high tires at the back and low tires in front. That's the one they used to carry chicken into this country. The smuggle rice into this country, smuggle all sorts of smuggle labels into this country. You see them back and they still manage to raise what cannot even solve our problem. They only raise money to pay their own salaries and little to the government. You see JAMB, they say they have raised money, 3-point-something billion. That's nothing. And we are used to the level of consumption we exhibit. We eat like, we consume like we are rich. That's why everybody is looking for avenues to steal. Education, like maybe education in the US now, it's not cheap.
Right.
All our young men are running to the UK now for schooling. For you to have your masters in the UK, you pay up to £10,000. £10,000 as of today is about 7 to 8 million. In Uniben,
that's going to be modest to the figure.
That is the cheap. I'm talking of the cheapest of the cheap. Yes. Now you are not going to any serious university. You go to maybe Plymouth, you go to Sunderland, all those low budget
community colleges.
Yes, UK universities. You cannot talk about Harvard and all those Ivy League universities. You can't afford. It's about $30,000-$40,000 or pounds, as the case may be. Uniben here, if you want to do your masters, if you struggle 600, 500, you have done it. 500,000 is just $1,000. 500,000 naira is just $1,000. So now you are paying a certain amount and you are expecting to get quality. More like I want to buy a Range Rover Sport for 100,000. When I pay 100,000 for Range Rover Sport, the Range Rover Sport will not be going on reverse. It is natural. You cannot have even if I get a Range Rover Sport.
That sounds like you're paying for one tire of the
vehicle. Yeah, you are paying for one tire of the vehicle. That's the truth. So if you pretend to pay for quality, the service provider will pretend to give you quality. That's what we have in this country. Recently, there was a big protest in Uniben about increase of school fees
by 20,000 for late payments.
Yes, yes. When I was in Uniben, let me use my own so that the younger ones now will not think I'm being pessimistic on their case. When I was in Uniben, I started paying school fees from 8,000 naira. 8,000. I can't even quantify it in dollars. That's next to nothing. So my entire industrial mathematics degree is almost a free education. That is, and you cannot blame the system. Our parents don't have it to pay.
So we can't survive like this. That's what
we cannot continue like this. I have suggested in time past, instead of all this money you spend on NYSC, disbursement to university, let university charge what they want to charge. Provide student loans for our undergraduates.
It's more sustainable.
Yes, it's more sustainable in the long term. So if I know I want to go to a university, I finish secondary school, I know I don't want to learn a trade, I have access to pick 10 million, and that 10 million I cannot spend it once. Maybe I'll be spending, place a ceiling on it, I spend 500,000 a year.
One academic cycle.
So it means in 4 years I spent 2 million. I still have 2 or 4 million. I still have 6 million in my account. I can go into a business, I can start a trade, I can do anything with it. It is better than pretending that the education is cheap, whereas it is not cheap.
In terms of quality?
Yes, I did Fortran in the university. I never I never went to a computer lab, but I did Fortran. I wrote the exam, I passed. Tomorrow you give me Fortran.
And that's a computer language?
Yes, you give me programming to do as an industrial mathematician, I'll be lost. People will say, you read industrial mathematics, you are talking on TV. What else will I do? Because the mathematics, I cannot apply it on ground. That is the reality. I am not trained to practicalize this knowledge. You see, some of us are able to practicalize. Those are the extremely brilliant ones. Not all of us are extremely brilliant. So that is, in a nutshell, we have to take ourselves more seriously. Education, infrastructure. You pretend to build roads. You pretend to build bridges. So you see some serious work going, like the second Nigeria. I'm very impressed by it. when that bridge is completed, the volume of traffic that will pass through that bridge, you see, it will boost the economy of the southeast.
I think that's what we're going to leave it, gentlemen. But again, I think it's interesting when you hear people talk about how that Harvard, as a university itself, has more money in its endowment than any African country, including Nigeria, for example. So let's continue to stay optimistic and work hard, really hard at it.
We have to be terrible.
So for now, we should be looking at between 50 and 100 years going forward. Gentlemen, thank you for coming to share brilliance with us on the program this morning. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I've been talking with Destiny Owobu, development economist, and I've also been talking with Zachary Idris, who's a public affairs analyst. This is what we're leaving it with this conversation. A couple of more interviews to come on the show this morning. Do stay with us.